Welcome to the eerie hour. Some places don't just haunt you, they wait. They settle into the quiet corners of your mind long before you ever cross their threshold. This is one such place, a house stooped and decaying, nestled deep in a forgotten valley where the air tastes of rust and rain. We walk towards it now, drawn by a purpose we can't quite name, a pull as insistent as the tide. The light dies early here, swallowed by ancient trees and the perpetual mist that clings like a second skin. Listen closely to the narrative that unfolds, not just with your ears, but with that prickling sensation on the back of your neck. If you enjoy descending into the strange and the forgotten, don't forget to like and subscribe, and share your theories below. Now let's begin. But remember, once the story starts, something always follows. You stand before the house. It doesn't welcome, it endures. Rain has wept against its clapboard skin for decades, peeling paint like sunburnt flesh, fostering a deep, pervasive rot. The air, even outside, is thick with the smell of wet wood and something colder, like disturbed earth. You push the front door and it groans inward, revealing a gloom that feels less like darkness and more like a substance. Inside, the silence is heavy, broken only by the drip, drip, drip of water somewhere within. This dripping is the first sound you truly notice, rhythmic and unnerving. It pulls you deeper. Downstairs, perhaps, in the cellar, the air grows colder, denser, the damp smell overwhelming. Here, amidst discarded furniture and forgotten heirlooms wrapped in dust sheets, you find it. A large, heavy drain cover set flush into the stone floor. It's made of dark, pitted iron, circular, and far too large for any conventional drain. It feels ancient, out of place, radiating an unnatural cold. As you look at it, a faint sound reaches you, like distant, muffled scratching from beneath the stone. A shadow shifts just outside your peripheral vision, a fleeting darkness against the gray light filtering through small windows. You turn, but nothing is there. Yet, the feeling persists, a growing certainty that you are not alone, that something watches, or perhaps listens, from within the house, or from below. A large, dark stain spreads across the nearby wall, a map of moisture seeping outwards, mimicking the decay that saturates the air. The stain is damp to the touch, cold and slick. Unease settles deep in your gut, a cold stone rolling. You stare at the drain cover, feeling a sudden, irrational certainty that the house isn't just damp, it's weeping. You kneel beside the drain cover. Its surface is rough, corroded, marked by patterns that might be accidental pitting or something deliberately carved, worn smooth by unseen forces. The faint scratching sound seems to pulse now, synchronized perhaps with the relentless drip, 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 echoing from deeper within the house's skeletal structure. You try to lift the cover. It doesn't budge. It feels impossibly heavy, fused to the stone, or held down by something unseen. You scrape a fingernail against the iron, and a fine powder of rust flakes off, carrying the scent of old iron and that cold, wet earth. The air around the drain feels colder than anywhere else in the cellar, a pocket of frigid stillness that makes the tiny hairs on your arms stand on end. You notice, for the first time, a thin line of moisture tracing the edge of the drain cover, as if something beneath is trying to push its way up, or is condensation from an impossible chill. The recurring damp patch on the wall nearby has grown, its edges more defined, resembling a dark, reaching hand against the plaster. She runs a hand along its cold, slick surface, feeling the pervasive moisture sink into her skin. It feels wrong, somehow oily despite being just water. Doubt begins to creep in, insidious and chilling. Was that scratching real? Or just the house settling, the wind whistling through broken panes? Is the cold merely typical cellar chill, magnified by expectation? But the unnatural weight of the cover, the distinct cold air emanating from it, denies simple explanations. The motif of the damp is becoming less about structural decay and more about a creeping intrusion, a veil between states. As you lean closer, listening intently to the faint sounds from below, you could swear you hear a soft, wet sigh from the other side of the iron barrier, a sound of immense weariness or anticipation. It makes your heart hammer against your ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage of bone. You stand up abruptly, needing distance, needing to break the connection with that cold, expectant metal. The house presses in. After the cold sigh from the drain, the ambient sounds of decay, the groaning wood, the persistent drip, seem to coalesce, to form a sort of low, resonant hum that vibrates in your teeth. You retreat from the cellar, but the chill follows. The damp patch on the wall isn't confined to the cellar anymore. You find a smaller, identical stain blooming on the landing wall upstairs, spreading like a bruise. It wasn't there before. The house feels increasingly active, not in a dramatic poltergeist way, but subtly, unnervingly. A door you closed moments ago stands ajar. A curtain hangs askew when you know you straightened it. These aren't things that frighten outright, but they wear away at your sense of control, your grip on reality. The air grows heavy with a new scent, faint but distinct, sweet and cloying, like rotting flowers or stagnant water left in a vase too long. It seems strongest near the growing damp patches. She traces the outline of the upstairs stain with a finger, feeling the spongy resistance of the saturated plaster. The scratches from below the drain echo in your memory, now seeming less like claws and more like a rhythmic tapping, insistent, perhaps even deliberate. The boundary motif shifts. It's no longer just the drain cover, but the very walls, the air itself becoming saturated, permeable. A growing obsession takes root. What is under that cover? What does the damp want? Sleep offers no escape. Dreams are filled with dark, swirling water and the pressure of something trying to surface. You find yourself drawn back to the cellar steps, compelled to listen to the sounds from the drain, trying to decipher their meaning, feeling a perverse comfort in the cold. Is the tapping a call or a warning? You aren't sure anymore. The tapping from the drain has changed. It is no longer random scratching, but a measured, rhythmic beat, slow and heavy, like a pulse. Thump, thump, thump. It seems to resonate through the stone floor, up into the structure of the house, vibrating in your bones. The damp patches continue their insidious march, appearing in new rooms, on different walls, always spreading outwards from a central point that seems to shift. In the study, a patch on the ceiling begins to swell and darken, like a monstrous eye watching you. The air is now thick with the cloying sweet scent, stronger than ever, almost suffocating in enclosed spaces. You notice small, dark droplets of moisture clinging to the underside of doorknobs. Cold and viscous to the touch, It is everywhere. She watches the ceiling stain grow, feeling a profound sense of dread mixed with morbid fascination. The ambiguity deepens. Is the house actively decaying, or is it becoming something else, something defined by this strange, dark moisture? You bring tools to the cellar, a crowbar, a chisel. The drain cover resists, the tools scraping against the old iron uselessly. But as you work, focused on the stubborn metal, the rhythmic thump from below stops. Silence. Then a new sound, wetter, deeper, like something large and heavy shifting in mud. A low, gurgling whisper rises from the tiny gaps around the cover's edge, too faint to make out words, but undeniably present, wet and resonant. The boundary is no longer solid. It is fluid, porous. Your obsession with the drain has consumed you. You neglect food, sleep, the outside world. All that matters is the rhythmic pulse, the spreading damp, the growing certainty that the house is not just haunted by the past, but is actively transforming into a threshold for something else. Is the water a barrier or the path itself? The gurgling whispers from the drain are constant now, a low, chthonic language spoken just beneath the surface of your hearing. The rhythmic thump has returned, louder, more insistent. The damp has reached critical mass. Entire walls weep dark moisture, and the floorboards in some rooms are warped and soft. The sweet, cloying scent is overpowering, filling every breath. You find fingerprints on the damp patches, smudged trails in the moisture that weren't there before, too large and indistinct to be yours. The central, uncanny event is undeniable. A viscous, dark liquid, thicker than water, and smelling intensely of that sweet rot, begins to seep from the edges of the drain cover, pooling slowly on the stone floor. It spreads with a disturbing sentience, drawn towards your feet. She stares at the dark pool, mesmerized by its slow, deliberate creep. A moment of psychological fracture grips you, not fear, but a strange, dissociative calm, a feeling that this is inevitable, preordained. Your memory of the last few days is hazy, punctuated by the thump of the drain and the spreading damp. Have you been here for days or weeks? The house feels like a single, vast, wet organ. The motif of the boundary has dissolved. The barrier is gone, or was never truly there. The liquid reaches your shoes, cold and sickeningly thick. The whispers from the drain seem to become clearer, coalescing into fragments of sound that aren't quite words, but carry immense weight, names you don't recognize, places that feel ancient and drowned. An ambiguous, chilling thought surfaces. Is this liquid leaking out, or is it rising up? Or perhaps you are somewhere else, and the house is only a memory that clings to your skin like the persistent damp. The dark liquid from the drain is gone, or has been absorbed, leaving only darker stains, like old blood, on the stone floor. The rhythmic thump is silent, but the quiet is not peace. It is the silence after a scream, filled with psychological residue. The feeling of being watched hasn't left, but has internalized. It feels like eyes peer out from behind your own. The memory of the spreading damp is vivid, a phantom chill on your hands, a phantom smell of sweet rot in your nostrils. You find yourself drawn to sources of water, sinks, baths, puddles, staring into them, half expecting to see a shadow move beneath the surface, half expecting to hear that low, wet whisper rise. The unanswered questions are like splinters under the skin. What was in the drain? What did the damp want? Did something escape? Or did something claim you? The motif of water lingers, no longer confined to the house. It is in the rain that falls outside your window, in the condensation on a cold glass, in the sound of your own breathing. The ambiguous line from before echoes. Was it rising up? It feels like it is still rising, inside you or around you, a subtle, pervasive presence. The damp stain remains a recurring nightmare, blooming on the walls of your mind. And if you hear it again tonight, don't answer. Not yet. The floor underfoot feels colder now. Not just cool stone, but a radiating chill that seems to seep through the soles of your shoes, climbing into your ankles. The subtle sounds, the faint gurgles and shifts from the first encounter with the drain, no longer feel like just the house settling or the old pipes complaining. They have sharpened, coalesced. They are distinct now, undeniably originating from that small, grimy circle of metal set into the floor. You stand near it again, drawn by a morbid curiosity that feels increasingly less like a choice and more like an imperative. The air here is heavy with the persistent, damp scent of stagnant water, but overlaid now with something else, something deeper and far fouler, like wet, turning earth mixed with decay. It clings to the back of your throat, and beneath the drone of the house, barely louder than the whisper of your own breath, the sounds from the drain are no longer hesitant gurgles. They are whispers. Faint at first, like dry leaves skittering across stone, then growing, weaving together. Not words, not exactly, but the sound of voices, too low to decipher, a murmur of unseen presences just out of reach. They seem to react to your stillness, a slight increase in pitch, a quickening rhythm. When you shift your weight, they seem to hesitate, then resume, lower now, cautious. It is the first concrete sign. This isn't wind or water in the pipes. This is something that hears you, something that knows you are listening. And with that realization comes the first major tear in the fabric of your solitude. Paranoia washes over you, cold and sharp as the air near the drain. You glance over your shoulder, then quickly back. The shadows seem deeper, pooling in the corners of the room like spilled ink. A sudden, visceral doubt blooms. Are you truly alone? Has someone slipped inside while you were distracted? Or is it something else? Something not bound by locks and doors, already here, hidden just beyond sight. The very air feels thick with unseen watchers. The house, moments ago a quiet refuge, now feels vast and permeable, a place where things can enter, where things are already waiting beneath the surface. The dampness, the decay, the stagnant water smell from the drain, they are no longer just problems of maintenance. They feel like symbols, manifestations of corruption, of things left to rot, of secrets buried and festering. The drain itself feels less like a utility and more like a mouth, an opening into a hidden, unclean place. And as you lean closer, compelled by an urge you can't resist, straining to hear the jumble of whispers, you notice it, a faint, almost erased etching on the tile, right beside the drain cover. A simple, looping symbol, like a knot or a stylized circle. And from the whispers, a single, raspy sound seems to repeat, a dry hiss that might be trying to form a word. Lost, lost, lost. The whispers subside slightly then, as if satisfied they have been heard. But the silence that follows is heavier than before, charged with the weight of their unseen presence, and the echo of that single chilling sound. It leaves you trembling, caught between the undeniable reality of the whispers and the terrifying possibility that the only thing lost is your own mind. You know with a certainty that chills you more than the floor, that the silence won't hold for long. Something has found its voice. Welcome to the eerie hour. Some places don't just haunt you, they wait. This house, for instance, it settled around you like a shroud the moment the keys turned the lock, older than its stones should suggest, whispering secrets on the wind that never quite blows inside. It waits in the settling dust, in the shadows that stretch too long, in the silence that isn't empty, but merely holding its breath. The air here is thick with the scent of damp earth and forgotten things, a smell that clings to your clothes, your hair, sinking deep into the wood of the old floorboards. The narrator's voice finds you in this space, calm, steady, like a hand guiding you through darkness you didn't know existed until now. It speaks of corners you haven't yet noticed, of sounds just below the threshold of hearing, inviting you to listen closer. If you enjoy descending into the strange and the forgotten, don't forget to like and subscribe and share your theories below. Now, let's begin. But remember, once the story starts, something always follows. Section 1. The house breathes around you, a slow, heavy inhale that seems to shift the very air in the room. It starts as a faint hum, almost imperceptible, vibrating somewhere deep within the walls, a sound you initially dismiss as the old plumbing or perhaps the wind outside finding an unusual cavity. But the humming persists, a low thrumming beneath the floorboards near the back of the house, specifically towards the kitchen or laundry area where the pipes are oldest. It is not a mechanical hum. It feels organic, like a large, tired body settling. The first supernatural event is this resonant frequency, an unnatural vibration that seems to resonate not just in the house's structure, but within your own bones. You stand still, head tilted, trying to locate its source, but it remains diffuse, everywhere and nowhere at once. A vivid atmospheric detail solidifies. The air in this particular part of the house is noticeably colder than the rest, carrying that persistent scent of damp earth, stronger here, almost metallic. It prickles on your skin despite the thermostat reading a reasonable temperature. This simple, persistent sound and localized chill introduce the first crack in your perception of the normal. It's a subtle intrusion, easily rationalized away, but it plants a seed of unease. Your mind attempts to find logical explanations, faulty wiring, drafts, the settling of an old building. But the logic feels thin, stretched taut against the strange resonance. This is the initial moment of psychological fracture, a tiny tremor of doubt in your own senses, a quiet question. Are you sure that's just the wind? The recurring symbolic motif appears first as a faint, almost inaudible static underlying the hum, like interference on a distant radio signal. It's background noise, nothing more, barely registered, yet it adds another layer to the unsettling soundscape. Perhaps the house itself is trying to speak. An unwelcome thought surfaces, ambiguous and unsettling. The sound continues, a low, patient pulse in the heart of the old house, waiting for you to acknowledge it fully. You shift your weight, hesitant to step closer to the source, yet drawn by a morbid curiosity. Section 2. The hum doesn't stop. It becomes a constant low thrumming presence, like a second heartbeat within the house. Now, When you stand near the kitchen, specifically near the old floor drain set into the linoleum beside the sink, the vibration feels centered there. It's an old drain, cast iron. It's grate rusted and scarred, rarely used. The supernatural event has shifted. The hum is no longer diffuse, but focused, emanating directly from beneath this heavy grate. It's joined by something else, a faint, liquid sound, a gurgling or lapping noise that shouldn't be there when no water is running. This is the uncanny element escalating, sounds of liquid motion beneath a dry, unused drain cover. The atmospheric detail intensifies. The cold spot around the drain is now distinctly palpable, a pocket of frigid air that makes your breath mist faintly, even indoors. The scent of damp earth is stronger too, mixed now with a stagnant, unpleasant odor, something rotten, or perhaps just very, very old water trapped somewhere deep below. You find yourself standing over the drain, drawn by the sounds, trying to peer through the rusty lattice of the grate, but seeing only darkness. This prolonged, focused attention on the drain, the attempt to decipher its strange sounds and smells, marks the next step in the psychological fracture. Rationalization is harder now. The sounds and cold are too specific, too persistent. A creeping sense of dread begins to curl in your stomach. The recurring symbolic motif, the static, is more noticeable now. A faint hiss overlaid upon the gurgling and humming from the drain. It sounds like distorted whispers, just below the threshold of intelligibility, buried within the noise. Is the static trying to filter the sound, or is it part of the sound itself? The question hangs unanswered in the cold air. You feel a strange reluctance to move away from the drain, a subtle tug of unseen focus that keeps you rooted to the spot for longer than intended, listening to the secrets churning in the darkness below. Section 3. The whispers woven into the static around the drain become clearer, more insistent. They are no longer just a background hiss. They rise and fall, coalescing into discernible sounds, sometimes distorted, sometimes shockingly clear. They speak your name, a low, sibilant sound that seems to slither out from the grate. They reference small, personal details, the color of a shirt you wore yesterday, a private thought you had hours ago, fragmented memories you haven't consciously revisited in years. These are details the voices shouldn't know, could not possibly know through any normal means. This is the central supernatural event. The voices from the drain are now intelligent, aware, and deeply personal. They begin explicitly demanding or coaxing you to lift the heavy, rusted cover. "Lift it," they hiss, or "let us out," a chorus of faint, desperate, or sometimes menacing tones. You feel a strange, almost physical pull towards the drain, a compulsion that tugs at your limbs, urging your hand towards the cold metal. It's a magnetic influence, palpable and strong, a force you actively struggle against, your muscles tensing. The house seems to conspire with the voices. Shadows deepen around the drain, seeming to coil like ropes, and the cold spot intensifies, becoming an icy pocket that chills you to the bone, reinforcing the drain's presence. This relentless, personal assault on your senses and will marks a significant psychological break. Obsession begins to take hold. You find yourself spending hours near the drain, sitting or standing, listening to the strange symphony of whispers, static, gurgling, and humming, compelled to understand, compelled to obey. The recurring static motif is now directly linked to the voices. They seem to emerge from the static, like a signal struggling through interference. Yet the interference itself feels intentional, a deliberate distortion. Foreshadowing grows stronger. The voices hint at others who have listened. Fragments of chilling stories or warnings appear in the static's roar, suggesting a shared fate tied to the drain. Tucked beside the drain, almost hidden by a loose tile, you notice a scrap of paper, damp and brittle. A tattered page from what looks like an old journal, detailing similar whispers and a dread of the final opening. It speaks of things trapped, contained, exerting pressure. Aligning perfectly with the decay and water motif, something ancient and unpleasant held just below the surface. Is this a warning, or just another part of the trap? The drain pulls, the voices call, and the world outside this small, cold corner of the house begins to fade into irrelevance. Section 4. The obsession deepens, becoming the central focus of your existence within the house. Sleep offers little respite, haunted by the drain's persistent call, the whispers now echoing in your dreams. You eat standing near the drain, read books with the faint metallic tang of decay in the air, the narrative blurring with the insidious voices. The central supernatural event is the drain's physical effect on your environment. The linoleum around it seems perpetually damp, though there is no visible leak. A faint, sickly green mold blooms near the edges of the grate, spreading outward by the hour. The air near the drain doesn't just feel cold anymore. It feels heavy, viscous, difficult to breathe. The static that accompanies the voices seems to shimmer visually now, a faint, almost invisible haze hovering just above the grate, like heat distortion on a hot road, but cold. This visual static is a terrifying atmospheric detail, making the unseen feel manifest. Your psychological fracture is significant now. You talk back to the voices sometimes, argue with them, plead for them to stop, or listen intently, trying to decipher their fragmented stories and demands. Paranoia sets in. You feel watched, not just by whatever is beneath the drain, but by the house itself, the shadows in other rooms seeming to lean in, the silence elsewhere feeling expectant. The recurring static motif is no longer just sound or visual distortion. It feels physical, a tingling sensation on your skin when you get too close to the drain, like mild electrical interference passing through you. It makes the small hairs on your arms stand on end, not from cold, but from something else. The whispers are clearer, the demands more singular now. Remove the grate. Just lift it. The tattered journal page is read and reread, its frantic scribbles about chains and depths becoming terrifyingly real as you gaze into the dark slots of the grate. Could opening it be the only way to make it stop, or the final mistake? The drain hums with a dark magnetic energy, demanding release, promising either freedom or something far worse. Section 5. The pull is almost unbearable now. It is less a suggestion and more a command etched into your very being. Your hand hovers over the drain cover, trembling, not entirely from fear, but from the immense unseen force urging it forward. This is the peak of the supernatural event. The drain cover itself seems to radiate a faint, cold energy, humming in response to your presence. The metallic scent is overpowering, thick and choking, mixed with the stench of stagnant water and something else, something ancient and organic. a terrifying atmospheric detail that coats your tongue and nostrils. The voices are a clamor now, a chorus of disparate whispers merging into a single, overwhelming roar when you get close, interspersed with the piercing hiss of the static. Your psychological state has fractured almost completely. Reality outside this room feels distant, a faded memory. You haven't eaten properly in days, haven't slept more than a few snatched, nightmare-filled hours. Your world has shrunk to the cold tile, the rusted grate, and the insistent sounds from below. You find yourself reasoning with the unseen, making bargains, or simply staring blankly, your mind struggling to hold on to coherence. The recurring static motif is everywhere. It fills the air around the drain. Crackles in your ears even when you step away and seems to distort your vision, making the edges of the room waver. It is the veil between worlds thinning, the interference between here and whatever is there. A low grinding sound joins the gurgling now, as if something heavy is shifting below, pressing against the underside of the drain. Is that the sound of containment, or the sound of something preparing to push through? Your fingers brush the cold, rough metal of the grate. The voices shriek with anticipation. The static spikes into a deafening roar, and the pull becomes a violent tug, threatening to drag you down to your knees before the dark opening. This is the threshold, the moment of decision, poised on the brink of yielding to the overwhelming, terrifying pressure. Section 6. The house is silent now, save for the normal creaks and groans of an old structure settling. The air in the kitchen is merely cool, the oppressive chill around the drain gone. There is no hum, no gurgling, no voices, and most notably, no static. The recurring motif has vanished, leaving behind an unnerving quiet, like the silence after a storm has passed, or perhaps before the next one gathers. The drain cover remains in place, rusted and scarred, looking exactly as it did before all this began. An innocent, mundane object on the floor. Yet, you cannot look at it without a tremor running through you. The aftermath is not dramatic. There is no gaping hole, no monstrous entity revealed. Just the profound, echoing silence where the noise used to be. The psychological residue is heavy, a constant awareness just beneath the surface of your thoughts. Did it happen? Did you imagine it? All? The vividness of the whispers, the pull, the fear. They feel too real to be mere delusion, yet the lack of any physical evidence leaves the truth suspended in agonizing ambiguity. You avoid that part of the kitchen, stepping carefully around the drain, as if the floor might give way. The unanswered questions linger like ghosts in the quiet rooms. What was speaking? What was trapped? What did it want? And where did it go? The tattered journal page is gone. You search for it after the silence fell, but it had vanished, as if it were never there. The drain sits dormant, a dark circle on the floor, a memory that is perhaps not a memory, but a scar left on your perception. Sometimes, silence is not the end of the story, but just a pause. And if you hear it again tonight, don't answer. Not yet. Welcome to the eerie hour. Some places don't just haunt you, they wait. They lie dormant beneath the surface of ordinary days, humming with a low, patient frequency until something stirs them awake. A loose floorboard, a draft from a forgotten window, a name whispered into an empty room. Then the waiting is over, and the place begins its work. It doesn't want your house, not really. It wants in. It wants to wear the air you breathe, Walk the steps you take. See through the eyes you use to look at the world outside. Sometimes, it even wants the memories you keep locked away. If you enjoy descending into the strange and the forgotten, don't forget to like and subscribe, and share your theories below. Now, let's begin. But remember, once the story starts, something always follows. The air hangs thick and still tonight, tasting of dust and something else. Something metallic and low, like old pennies left in a damp drawer. You stand before the hallway mirror, not truly seeing your own reflection, but rather the space behind you, the deepening shadows pooling where the light dies. The house breathes around you, a slow, almost imperceptible sigh that seems to shift the very dust motes in the air. It started subtly, a faint whisper when you were alone, easily dismissed as wind or the old pipes settling. But the whispers have grown bolder, finding purchase in the quiet corners of your mind. They speak in a language that is both familiar and utterly alien, promising secrets or perhaps threats you can't quite decipher. You press a hand against the cool glass of the mirror. Your fingers leave a faint, smudged print that lingers too long. It's as if the mirror surface itself is reluctant to release the mark, holding on to the brief contact with unnatural tenacity. You blink, and the print is gone, swallowed by the reflective depth. Or was it ever there? A trickle of unease worms its way into your gut, cold and sharp. You turn away quickly, the silence behind you suddenly feeling vast and expectant. You walk towards the sound of nothing, down the hallway that seems a little longer than you remember, pulled by an unseen thread towards the rooms where the shadows seem to gather most densely, where the whispers feel closest to your ear, promising to reveal what the mirror refuses to show. The air grows colder the further you walk, carrying a faint, sour scent you can't identify. The whispers have become clearer now, no longer just indistinct murmurs, but edges of words, fragments of sentences that brush against your awareness, like phantom fingers. They twist around the periphery of your thoughts, just outside the reach of conscious understanding, yet potent enough to plant a seed of disquiet. You find yourself pausing in doorways, tilting your head, certain you heard your name called from an empty room. The mirror at the end of the hall seems to watch you, its dark surface a pooling void reflecting the dim light and the uncertain shape of your retreating back. It doesn't offer comfort, only a cold, unblinking gaze that suggests it knows more than it reflects. There is a subtle shift in the house's atmosphere, a growing pressure that seems to press in on you from all sides, like being submerged in deep water. You touch the wall as you pass, feeling the rough texture beneath your fingertips, needing the tactile reassurance of solid reality. But even the walls feel different, somehow thinner, less substantial. The sour smell is stronger here, near the closed door at the end of the hall, where the shadows cling like damp moss. You hesitate, your hand hovering over the doorknob. The whispers seem to coalesce behind it, a low, insistent hum that resonates in your bones. It's just an old storage closet, you tell yourself, filled with forgotten things. But the whispers tell you otherwise. They promise something else entirely, something that waits just beyond the barrier of wood and paint, something that has been watching you from the darkness of the house's forgotten spaces. You can feel its patient attention, like a physical weight pressing down on your chest. The air here is heavy, suffocating. You feel a sudden, overwhelming urge to run, to get away from the oppressive quiet and the watchful dark of the hall. But your feet feel rooted to the floor, held fast by an invisible force. You stare at the doorknob, mesmerized by its dull gleam in the faint light, and wonder if turning it will unleash something you can never put back. The house seems to hold its breath, waiting for your choice. The door remains closed, but the stillness behind it feels alive, a presence contained, but not inert. The whispers now carry a new tone, a low, mocking quality that pricks at your conscience. They don't speak words you understand, but the feeling is unmistakable. They know things you'd rather keep hidden. Your gaze drifts back to the mirror down the hall. It seems darker now, its surface troubled, as if reflecting disturbed water. Your reflection looks back, but there's a strange rigidity to its posture, a fixedness in its stare that doesn't quite match your own hesitant stance. You raise a hand to touch your face, and the reflection raises its hand an instant too late. Its movement jerky, wrong. A tremor runs through you, a deep chill unrelated to the cool air. The whispers suddenly intensify, no longer just around the door, but seeming to emanate from the walls, the floor, the very air. They are louder now, closer, and you begin to discern shapes within the sound. Not just words, but fragments of voices, familiar voices, laced with accusation. Your mother's sigh of disappointment, a forgotten friend's casual betrayal, your own silent moments of guilt played back like distorted music. The sour smell grows sharper, metallic and unpleasant, clinging to the back of your throat. You take a step back from the closed door, your heart pounding against your ribs. The house feels like a single, vast mouth, whispering your failures back to you. Doubt begins to bloom, a cold, insidious flower in your mind. Did you really lock the back door last night? Did you turn off the stove? Small, ordinary uncertainties magnify, feeding the whispers. You look at the mirror again, and for a fleeting second, the reflection isn't yours. It's something else, something gaunt and shadowed, its eyes large and dark, fixed not on you, but on the space behind you, towards the closed door. Then it's gone, replaced by your own terrified face. You stumble back further, bumping against the wall. The plaster feels damp beneath your hand, cool and yielding, weeping a dark stain that wasn't there a moment ago. The voices are no longer subtle. They are an intrusive, swirling current in your mind, plucking at the threads of your memories, weaving them into grotesque tapestries of guilt and fear. Remember when you left her? They hiss, twisting a moment of difficult, necessary departure into cruel abandonment. You forgot, didn't you? Just like you forget everything important. Your own past actions, your regrets, become weapons turned against you. You try to hold on to a specific memory, the warmth of summer sunlight, the face of a loved one, but it fragments, the details blurring, shifting. Was the sun really shining, or was it raining? Was that person smiling or crying? You can't be sure. The house itself seems to conspire in this distortion. You walk into the living room, certain the armchair was by the window, but it's now angled towards the fireplace. Didn't the stairs creak on the third step? Now it's the fifth. The layout feels subtly wrong, like a familiar map redrawn by a malicious hand. Sleep offers no escape. Instead, it's a plunge into vivid, unsettling visions. Not dreams, but hyper-realistic scenes that blend seamlessly into waking life. Corridors that stretch into infinity, faces that melt into shadows. The persistent, sickening taste of decay. You wake up gasping, unsure if the vision has ended or if you are still within it. Confusion is a constant companion. You forget where you are going mid-step, forget what you were doing with your hands. Moments vanish, leaving blank spaces in your awareness. Am I losing my mind? The question echoes in the hollow chambers of your skull, amplified by the voice's cruel laughter. The supernatural element is laid bare. This is not just haunting, but a psychic intrusion, an active warping of perception and memory. The decay motif is everywhere now. Not just the damp spots, but the air itself feels stagnant, heavy with rot. A pervasive dripping sound starts, not from the pipes, but seeming to come from within the walls, within your head, mirroring the erosion of your mental state, your sense of self dissolving like sugar in water. You stumble towards the downstairs bathroom, drawn by the persistent drip. Leaning over the sink, you stare into the drain, a dark, circular maw. As the water swirls down, distorted by the motion, you see a fleeting image reflected there. Not the porcelain, but a terrifying, leering face pressed against the swirling surface. Its features stretched and elongated, its eyes vast and dark, seeming to look up directly at you from the dark, wet depths. It feels like a direct clue, a terrifying aspect of the entity tied to this damp, decaying space, a reflection of the dissolution occurring within you. The image in the drain is gone, swallowed by the dark pipe below, but its impression is seared behind your eyes. The face, gaunt, ancient, eyes like bottomless wells, suggests something profoundly wrong, something that has been here for a very long time, feeding on the house, on you. The decay motif is no longer just ambient. It feels personal, the creeping rot, spreading not just through the walls, but through your own thoughts. The damp spots on the ceiling look like spreading bruises. The persistent drip feels like a slow hemorrhage. You touch your temple, finding it slick with sweat, though the air is cold. The confusion deepens into pockets of complete blankness. You find yourself standing in a room with no memory of entering it, holding an object you don't recognize. The mirrors are the worst. You see your reflection, but it's overlaid with phantom shifts. A hint of that gaunt face beneath your own skin. Eyes that briefly flare with an unnatural light. In the hallway mirror, the spatial distortion is terrifyingly real now. The reflected hallway doesn't match the one behind you. It's longer, the doors are in different places, and at the far end, instead of the back wall, there is only an infinite, swirling darkness. The voices seize on this, whispering, "Go into the mirror. It's better there. Easier." They promise an end to the confusion, an escape from the dissolving reality, but their tone is laced with the same mocking cruelty. You feel the desperate urge to believe them, to step through the glass into the endless dark, just to make the questioning stop. The psychological residue of the entity's intrusion is thick and suffocating. You doubt everything, the time of day, the names of people you know, your own name. Who are you if your memories are lies and your reflection isn't yours? The clue from the drain connects the supernatural presence directly to the physical decay, suggesting it is the decay, or perhaps birthed by it, thriving in the house's rot and your own fracturing mind. The ambient unease has become a visceral terror, a constant state of dread, punctuated by flashes of pure, disorienting madness. You lean against the damp wall, feeling the cool moisture seep through your clothes, indistinguishable now from the cold sweat on your skin. The house is no longer just haunted. It is the haunting, a living, breathing entity of decay and distorted perception, and you are trapped within its consciousness. The silence that follows is not empty, but full of watchful expectation. The voices have quieted, for now, a temporary reprieve that feels more ominous than their clamor. You are left adrift in the aftermath, the echoes of their manipulative whispers still vibrating in your bones. The confusion hasn't lifted entirely, settling instead into a dull, persistent ache behind your eyes. Memories remain unreliable, flickering in and out like a faulty light bulb, leaving you grasping at fragmented images and feelings you can no longer place. The house still feels wrong, subtly shifted, but you no longer have the energy to test its geometry. You simply move through it, a ghost in your own dissolving landscape. The decay motif persists. The air still carries the sour scent. The damp spots continue their slow creep across the ceiling like a spreading illness. It feels less like a physical manifestation now, and more like an internal state, the tangible sign of something breaking down within you. The questions linger, cold and unanswered. What was that face in the drain? What does the entity want? Is any of this real, or is it all a fabrication of a mind under siege? The recurring motif of the mirror has shifted. You avoid looking into them now, afraid of what might look back, afraid of seeing that other face, or worse, seeing your own reflection fully erased. When you catch a glimpse in a window pane or a polished surface, your reflection is hazy, indistinct, as if the image of you is beginning to fade from the world. The terror has receded, replaced by a profound, weary numbness, the psychological residue of having your reality dismantled piece by piece. You are changed, irrevocably altered by the descent, marked by the damp, the decay, and the whispers that rewrote your past. The house waits, patient. It knows you are fragile now, that the boundaries between self and other, between real and unreal, are dissolving like sugar in water. You sit in the quiet dark, listening to the house breathe, listening for the return of the voices, for the insidious drip that signals the continued erosion. And if you hear it again tonight, don't answer, not yet. Welcome to the eerie hour. Some places don't just haunt you, they wait. They are spaces where the veil thins, where the past is not just remembered, but lived, where silence holds a weight heavier than stone, and shadows breathe in the corners of the room. You find yourself drawn to these places, perhaps against your will, perhaps compelled by a morbid curiosity that refuses to release its grip. Tonight, we stand on the threshold of just such a place, a house that seems to have swallowed time whole, where the ordinary twists into the monstrous. The air here is thick with secrets, and the floorboards groan under unseen weight. If you enjoy descending into the strange and the forgotten, don't forget to like and subscribe, and share your theories below. Now, let's begin. But remember, once the story starts, something always follows. The house stands silent now, a hulking shape against the bruised twilight sky. Inside, a single room holds the focus of your attention. It is a small, forgotten space, perhaps a former scullery or laundry room, cool and tasting faintly of damp earth. In the center of the floor, set into the gray concrete, is the drain. A simple metal grate, dark and unassuming. But you feel its presence like a cold weight in your chest. You walk toward it slowly, the sound of your own breathing loud in the oppressive quiet. There is no other sound, no creaks, no settling timbers, just this profound, expectant stillness that wraps around you like a shroud. You kneel beside the drain, the metal cool beneath your fingertips. There is a faint, sour scent rising from it, something stagnant and old, like water that has been trapped for centuries. You stare at the grimy metal, noting the pattern of its holes, the rust blooms spreading from its edges like a dark disease. This quiet is too perfect, too absolute. It feels manufactured, like the world outside the house has ceased to exist. And then, just at the edge of hearing, like dry leaves skittering across concrete, it is faint, almost imperceptible, and seems to come not from the drain itself, but from somewhere deep within the stone walls, or maybe from inside your own head. You hold your breath, listening. The sound is gone, or maybe it was never there. Just the silence again, vast and deep. You tell yourself it is nothing, just the house settling, just the echo of old plumbing. But the thought feels brittle, a thin shield against a growing certainty that something here is awake. And it is watching. The air chills noticeably around the drain. It is colder than the rest of the room, colder than it should be. The whisper returns, a dry, sibilant sound that tickles the edges of your perception. It is like dust speaking. You press a trembling finger against the cold metal grate. It does not budge. The dry, scraping whispers return, more distinct this time, though still frustratingly unclear. They sound like multiple voices layered over one another, thin and reedy, lacking substance but full of intent. They weave in and out of your consciousness, impossible to ignore, impossible to fully grasp. You trace the pattern on the drain cover again, trying to focus, trying to understand what they want. The air around the drain is now noticeably colder, drawing the warmth from your hands and face. This cold is not just temperature. It feels like an absence, a void where warmth should be. It pools around the drain like unseen water. A faint, cloying smell rises with it, something like damp earth and forgotten flowers, heavy and sweet in a sickening way. It clings to the back of your throat. You stand up, needing to move, needing to break the spell of the drain, but the whispers seem to follow, buzzing just behind your ears. They seem to be focused on the drain, on the grate itself, repeating a sound that might be a word, a name, or perhaps a simple, insistent instruction. You feel a growing unease solidify into a cold dread. It's the feeling of being caught, of realizing you've walked into a trap you didn't even see. Doubt flickers. Maybe you should just leave. Walk out the door, ignore the house, forget the drain. But the thought feels alien, impossible. A strange, obsessive focus has settled over you, binding you to this place, to this sound. The whispers seem to grow bolder as this thought crosses your mind. A collective sigh of impatience. You look at the drain again, the metal grate seeming somehow darker, older than before. It feels like a closed eye, watching you with 100 tiny pinprick pupils. The whispers converge, briefly forming something that sounds like a question, low and demanding, before dissolving back into their fragmented hiss. Was it a question they asked, or a command? You cannot be sure. The whispers are no longer just at the edge of hearing. They are closer now, inside the room with you, perhaps even inside your head. They are louder, a chorus of dry, rustling sounds that rub against each other like sandpaper. You can almost make out individual voices, distinct in their rasping tone, some high and thin, like old wire, others low and grating, like stones shifting underground. They are all focused on one thing: the drain cover. They seem to be urging you, insisting that you lift it. The atmospheric detail around the drain is intensifying. The concrete floor immediately surrounding the grate has begun to take on a strange texture. It feels slick under your fingers, despite appearing dry, and somehow yielding, like old skin. The walls near the drain also feel different, colder, and tracing them reveals a subtle raised pattern that was not there before, like veins pushing just beneath the surface. You feel a profound sense of psychological fracture. The initial fear is warring with a deep, burning curiosity, an obsession that feels implanted, not your own. You need to know what the whispers want you to see. You need to see what is beneath the grate. This need is almost physical, a pressure building behind your eyes. The whispers coalesce, repeating a single word or sound over and over, a low guttural sound that vibrates in your bones. It sounds like open, just that, repeated endlessly, layered in 1,000 dry voices. You find yourself reaching for the drain cover, your fingers brushing against the cold, slick metal. A faint scratching sound comes from beneath the grate, tiny claws on metal, responding to your touch. It is a sound that chills you to the marrow, a sound that confirms the whispers are not just voices, but something waiting. They promised relief, if only you weren't sure what. The chorus of whispers is now a cacophony, a tide of dry sound that fills the room and pounds against your skull. They are no longer subtle. They are demanding, desperate, angry. They overlap and collide, 1,000 different voices screaming the same word, repeating the same insistence. It is overwhelming, a physical assault on your senses. You press your hands against your ears, but it does no good. The sound seems to come from inside you now. The air around the drain is thick and heavy, like breathing underwater. It carries the sickening sweet scent more strongly now, cloying and suffocating. Looking down, the drain cover seems to pulse faintly, a dark heart beating in the concrete floor. The strange texture on the floor and walls has spread, the slick, yielding surface covering a wider area, and the raised, vein-like patterns on the walls are more pronounced, darker, writhing faintly in your peripheral vision. Your psychological state is dissolving into a panicked desperation. You want to run, to flee this place, but your feet feel rooted to the floor. At the same time, the compulsion to lift the grate is almost unbearable, a crushing weight on your will. It feels like the only way to make the noise stop, to find peace. The whispers are no longer just demanding. They are revealing fragmented truths, horrifying flashes of images that don't belong to you. Damp earth, twisted shapes, endless darkness. They hint at things trapped, things waiting, things that need to be released. The sound is a roaring inside your head, 1,000 thirsty mouths screaming to be fed. It is the sound of something ancient and terrible, pressing against the thin barrier of metal and stone. They want out, and they believe you are the key. The voices reach a peak intensity, a deafening chorus that transcends mere sound. It is a physical pressure against your mind, a vibration that shakes your very being. Whispers, pleas, threats, promises, they are all one now, A single, overwhelming force. Fragmented truths flash behind your eyes, not spoken, but shown. Glimpses of a horrifying history tied to this house, to this drain, to acts done long ago. They speak of themselves, of what they are, and the knowledge sears your consciousness with its sheer alien wrongness. The compulsion to lift the drain cover is no longer just strong. It is overwhelming, an unstoppable current pulling you towards the grate. Your hands hover over the cold metal, trembling uncontrollably. It is an almost unbearable urge, primal and absolute. The environment around the drain is reacting physically. The walls feel impossibly cold now, radiating a chilling despair. The air is not just heavy, it is thick, viscous, like breathing through mud. The strange textures on the surfaces nearby pulse visibly, the vein-like patterns on the walls darkening and seeming to shift just beyond your focus. You are at the absolute precipice of giving in, of surrendering to the crushing pressure. This is the psychological break, a moment of pure, agonizing desperation, a final, internal battle against the consuming urge that threatens to swallow you whole. The full, imminent power of the entity or force contained by the drain is making itself felt. A terrifying presence pressing from beneath, yearning for release. The drain cover, the decay, the water, they are not just motifs. They are the final threshold, the barrier about to be breached. In the midst of the roaring cacophony, urgent clues flash like blinding light. A fleeting, horrifying vision of what lies beneath, glimpsed through the metal grate. Something dark and moving in the stagnant water. And then, cutting through the noise with terrible finality, a single word is whispered, sharp and clear. A name. And the name, it felt like your name, somehow twisted. The deafening roar ceases abruptly, plunging the room into a profound, ringing silence. It is a silence that feels earned, heavy with the weight of what just transpired. You stand trembling near the drain, your hands still hovering, or perhaps having just recoiled from the cold metal. The air is no longer thick, but thin and cold, carrying only the faint, lingering scent of damp earth and something else, something acrid and metallic. The strange textures on the walls and floor have receded, the surfaces returning to their normal, albeit still grimy state. But the feeling of them remains on your fingertips. You are exhausted, your mind raw and aching from the onslaught. The psychological residue of the experience clings to you like a second skin. The horrifying visions, the twisted name, the sheer presence that pressed against you, they are etched into your memory, impossible to forget. You stare at the drain cover. It is just metal again, dark and silent, offering no answers, giving no sign of the power that surged beneath it moments before. What happened? Did you flinch away at the last second? Did the thing itself withdraw? Or was the breach made and something slipped out into the quiet air? You don't know. There are only unanswered questions, echoing in the sudden vacuum where the voices used to be. The drain is still there. A dark point on the floor, a promise of something terrible that might still be waiting or might have been released. The whispers are gone for now, the motif of their sound replaced by the chilling absence of any sound at all. But the silence feels temporary, fragile. As you turn away from the drain, a faint, almost imperceptible chill touches the back of your neck. Perhaps the whispers are just resting. Perhaps they are just waiting for nightfall. And if you hear it again tonight, don't answer. Not yet. You stand shivering, though the air is still and holds no chill. The floorboards beneath your bare feet are damp, cool against the skin, a dampness that has seeped into the very wood and will not dry. The drain in the corner is silent. It is closed. You did not open it. You did not look too closely when the sound stopped, when the frantic rattling ceased, leaving only the echo of its struggle in the ringing quiet of your own ears. But you saw enough, the way the grating flexed, the blackness that seemed deeper than any shadow beneath it, the brief, awful scent of something like stagnant water and something else, something foul and ancient, that clings now to the air like a shroud. The house feels different, permanently altered. The oppressive quiet that replaced the static is not a peace. It is the silence of a predator waiting. The walls watch. The shadows hold their breath. There is a new kind of dust in the air, heavy and gray, settling on everything like ash from a terrible fire that only burned inside your mind. The scent of decay is no longer just near the drain. It's a faint, insidious undercurrent in every room, a permanent stain on the environment, on the furniture, on the very fabric of the air you breathe. It's also on you. You look at your hands. They are clean, but they feel perpetually soiled. They tremble sometimes, remembering the urge to lift that grate, to see what absolute darkness held. That urge is gone now, replaced by a profound, gut-wrenching horror. But the knowledge of its presence within you is a new kind of wound. You are marked. The isolation is complete. The house is not just a place you inhabit. It is a mirror reflecting your broken state. You see the drain everywhere, in the dark lines between floorboards, in the swirling patterns of dust, in the blank stare of your own reflection. The recurring static is gone, yes, but this silence is its alternate form, a void where its clamor used to be, a confirmation that whatever it was, it is now irrevocably, terrifyingly present in its stillness. Perhaps the house wasn't trying to speak to you, but merely reveal what was already here. You sit by the window, watching the gray light filter through grimy panes that haven't been washed in years, or perhaps decades, the decay mirroring the state of everything now. There are no answers. The entity's fate is unknown. The house stands, silent and stained. Your fate is sealed within its walls, haunted not just by what you saw or almost saw, but by the inescapable knowledge of what you have become. The water stains on the ceiling spread slightly each day, like a map of a spreading infection, a slow, quiet rot consuming everything. And if you hear it again tonight, don't answer. Not yet.